In this video, I'm going to explain to you how you can get paid for your business tax-free without giving up any equity. So hi, if you're new to the channel, my name is Alex Shimozy. I own acquisition.com. We own a portfolio of companies that is about $85 million a year. I just made this channel because a lot of people are broke and I do not want you to be one of them. So welcome to Mosey Nation. So today the topic is going to be talking about debt. And this is going to be one of the more interesting chats that we've had because this is something that I have spent a lot of time learning about. And probably not in the traditional sense of personal finance, but more so in the kind of mergers and acquisition sense of how debt is used, right? And so one of the first things that I had to understand as a business owner is understanding why we want to sell a business. Because a lot of people want to exit their business because it seems like this big aspirational goal. And as somebody who has now exited 6 different businesses, I can tell you it's not nearly as inspiring. There's the story of the exit and there's the reality of the exit. The reality of the exit is that you've got transition documents. Not all of that cash is up front. Most of the time, you're going to have earnouts. You're going to have seller financing that's involved. You have to roll a certain percentage of equity. And you've got, and then finally, you've got cash. Once you have cash, you have bonuses, distributions. You've got financing costs that are associated with the transaction costs. And then finally, you have your chunk of money. But wait, there's another 20% that's going to go to Uncle Sam, and then you're left with X, right? And sometimes X is very different from the enterprise value of what you've sold at. And so one of the things that I can tell you about the wealthiest people that I know who are all over 10 figures is that the wealthiest people in the world, they buy and they build, and most times they don't sell. Even though us as entrepreneurs, we have this dream of it, it's usually because we're trying to get out of some sort of pain, right? Because I have realized this, that the times that I want to sell is when I'm in the most pain. The times when I don't want to sell is when everything's going well. And so what I should be doing is figuring out how to get out of pain rather than trying to, it's like I think there's a Chinese saying, to kill a mosquito with a cannon, right? Which is like, it's overkill. It's like, hey, why don't we just solve the problem by hiring the 1 or 2 people you need to hire rather than sell the entire business, right? And so one of the things I want to introduce today along that concept is how can you still get paid or de-risk? Because for most business owners or entrepreneurs, the majority of your net worth is in your business, right? And so, or businesses. And so if the majority of your net worth is in this thing that's a high risk asset class, I'd like to ideally share some of that risk with other people. And so there are multiple different debt functions you can use, but I think the easiest analogy for this is a house, okay? Or an apartment building, doesn't really matter. So let's imagine you have a house, and let's imagine that you started this, except this house, you were able to build without land, and you were able to build it just using your own money, and you actually built it yourself, all right? So you paid money out of pocket, month over month over month, and you slowly started assembling this house, piece by piece by piece, right? And then you started getting tenants inside of it, right? You got little tenants in here. And for us, those are our customers, but it functions more or less the same way. You got these people that you've been slowly filling it up. And so now all of a sudden, this thing spits out cash flow every month, just like a rental apartment unit might. The similarity here, and I'm using this analogy because it was the one that made the most sense to me, is that everything up to this point, you own 100% in cash, all right? This is equity that you have in this house. Now, in a normal home, or you were a real estate investor, you would say, hey, I would like to get higher returns because I can get 80% of this financed through a bank, right? You can get a loan in the form of debt. And so the example here is, let's say you've got a $1 million business. You've got a $1 million business, right? Which we'll still use as this house, right? If this business over the next 5 years goes to $2 million a year, right? Or $2 million in value, excuse me, then you would have 2x'd your net worth, right? Because you own 100% of this thing. Now, what if you were able to have your $1 million thing and then split it into, you keep 20% in the business, right? And then you get a check for $800,000. Now, realistically, I'll tell you what the more realistic outcome of something like this might be. And there are 2 ways to do this. But let's say that you did 30% and then 70%, right? So then this would be 300K and this would be 700K, okay? So that's what we would get. So this would be 70%, and this would be a loan. Now here's what's cool. Because this is a loan against your building, this is not income, which means, you guessed it, it's tax-free. So remember before I talked to you earlier, if you were to sell a business, you probably have to keep a certain percentage in because no one's going to, most people are not going to want you to have a full exit, especially if you're a smaller business. And so you would have this 80%, but then this 80% would then get nixed and cut. It's not going to be all cash anyways. But even if it were all cash, you then have to pay 20%, right, of that amount, which would be 16% off from whatever that number is, which, for math's sake, you get 760K, but you have to take the 20 out. So you have 560K after taxes and with you holding your 20. So this is what you'd get. But here's what's crazy, is that through debt, you can get a $700,000 loan and still own the darn thing. But here's what's cooler. You now have your $1 million business that's growing to $2 million, for example. But then you have this $700,000 that you have a loan from off of this that you can also still try and grow, let's say $2 million in that same time period. And now you own the delta, which overall your net worth is now 3.3 million versus the original 2 million you had before. And so there are two ways. There's a lot of ways that you can take out a debt in the company. You can do minority, you can do majority, you can do dividend recap. There's more things than I can get into. But fundamentally, just understanding that from an exit perspective, and this changed the way I saw business, is that if you don't want to sell because you want to keep your thing forever, totally fine. But as you're keeping it, it's just like an apartment building. You can still refinance at regular intervals as the value of the property or as your business grows, so that you can then take this money out, de-risk yourself, and put it in other assets. Because let's be real, we have all been through a crazy last couple of years. Anything could happen. And so for you to de-risk a little bit, I think for many is a beneficial thing. And candidly, it's also how every CEO of a publicly traded company lives, is they never sell their equity. Well, some of them do, but majority of the time they're not selling their equity. They're living off of loans that are asset backed. They loan against the equity that they have, and the stocks grow tax free because they compound, and then the loans are locked in, which you can then refinance them later because now the asset is worth more. And so you basically just gained that money for truly free. You don't even have to pay it back. Or even if it was the same price overall, you actually still got a discount because you didn't have to pay income tax on the loans that you took against your assets, right? And so I wanted to explain this because in my mind, I didn't know a way to have any kind of de-risking event for myself without selling the business. I just didn't know if there was another way. And so I'm making this, like I make everything in this channel, is because a lot of people are broke and I know which one of them. And I've learned, a fair amount in the transactions that we've done and in growing the companies that we have. And I just want to share those lessons with you guys. So hopefully you enjoy this. Hopefully this is a frame shift or perspective in terms of how you see the equity growth in your business, how you ultimately can grow your net worth faster in a lower risk environment that way. And I'll tell you one more thing. I was talking to a private equity managing partner, and he was saying how for some of our companies, for example, he was like, you guys don't even have, you have negative leverage. He said, you have cash on your balance sheet. He's like, it's ridiculous. He said, you should be taking loans against that equity so that you can redeploy it and do X, Y, and Z. And so it was just a very interesting perspective. I thought I would share it with you. It's something that we look to, continue to do in our businesses, and I figured I would share it with you because I love you guys and keep being awesome. So enjoy this video, enjoy the next video, and I'll see you soon. Bye.